All right, I think we might get started, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our week 11 of our 12-week program. Today's session is sponsored by AB Phillips, People Matters Advice Line. I would like to take the time to thank our platinum sponsors, Pentair and Fluidra, and our silver sponsor, Hayward. To start us off today, I would like to welcome Melissa from Clark Rubber. Melissa is a qualified certified professional coach with over 4,000 hours of coaching experience. She has 20 years of business experience at a variety of different levels, from apprentice through business owner to people and development executive. So thanks so much for joining us today, Melissa. We appreciate having you with us. I just want to run through a few questions with you today.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
So just to give us a bit of an insight into what your take is on these topics, what are some of the key elements that, for you, when it comes to positive workplace relationships?
Yeah, look, it's actually a really interesting topic. For me, positive workplace relationships are almost like any other relationship that you have. They take effort and they take a little bit of trust and a little bit of honesty to come through. So one of the first things that I look at from a key element point of view is that we need to, in a business setting especially, we need to recognise the person. And then we need to recognise the effort that they put in. So it's really, really important from that point of view that the person themselves is the key to what they do. You know, every task or every role can be replaced, but the people themselves can't be. So we must always recognise those people, and it's a key thing to creating those great leadership skills is to recognise that person, recognise that effort. The second one that I kind of look at is when we look at things like diversity or range of people that we have. You know, the strengths that we have lie in the differences that we have. If we have the same people with the same values and the same direction in their world, then our business doesn't grow. Our business remains exactly the same. So having those differences and the diversity in your team is a really, really important way. It helps to support and structure who you are, and it helps to drive businesses in directions that they need. And then the next one that I'm really, when it comes to human resources and learning and development and those types of things, the really important thing that I notice is that with leaders, they have to actually trust first before they can be trusted. And I like to use a quick example if I've got the time for that one, which is kind of like having kids. You want your kids to learn and grow and be able to leave the house and take care of themselves. But if we don't give them the opportunity to fail at that, then they never gain the skills or the experience they need to do that. And leadership in business is exactly the same. You have to give the people the trust. They can't earn it without you giving it first. And once they've earned that, when they've earned your trust, you in return have actually got trust from them as well. So they're my three key: recognize the person, the effort, strength lies in our differences, and then a leader must first trust before they can be trusted.
Amazing. I think a lot of us would completely agree with that as well.
Oh, thank goodness.
Definitely. We would hope so, right?
Yeah.
Also, Melissa, have you completed any personality tests or anything that would help you communicate with your co-workers?
I have. I'm actually what we call an e-disc profiler. So not only have I completed it, but I can complete it on others, which makes it really helpful. And I've also done one called the Myers-Briggs or the 16-point personality test. So those ones are fine. I like to integrate those together. The Myers-Briggs or the 16-point personality test is as it says, a personality test, and the DISC profiler is actually a behavioural test. So I like to use those ones to really have an idea of what types of people we have and where their strengths and weaknesses are and where we're able to support each other.
Absolutely. And I think we actually have access to the link on that one. So for everyone who's interested, we will be putting that in the chat box at some point as well.
Beautiful.
Awesome. So also, do you have any advice for us or things that you actively do to establish or endorse and expand effective workplace relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big things that I look at is, we're taught when we were kids to treat others how we'd like to be treated. And what I found as we go through life and go through business is that that's not really true. What you have to actually do is actually treat people how they need to be treated. They need to understand that they may be different from you. And if that's the case, you can't treat them the same way. You can't treat them the way that would work for you. You have to understand who they are and therefore what works best for them. And the other two that I then look at is, one is that people don't get up in the morning planning to be a failure. They don't get up in the morning deciding that I'm going to be the worst version of myself today. So knowing that they're not doing that, and if something happens or they're unable to manage themselves, or they're in performance management or planning or anything like that, they're doing the best they have with the resources they have available to them. And from a leadership perspective, it's our job to make sure that they have the different resources that they need to change who they are and to support them to make that happen. So that's a really important one for me. And then the final one is to hopefully teach everybody in the world that there is no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. Life does not end if we get something wrong. So we just have to step up and find another way and another way and another way. And that's what differentiates us, other than opposable thumbs, from everything else, is that we continue to step back up and get up and get up and do it again and find another way and find another way. So that's my three fun pieces of advice. Treat others how they want to be treated. There is no failure, there's only feedback, and people don't get up in the morning planning to fail.
Amazing. 3 great points. I think I'll definitely be keeping a mental note of those. Amazing. Also, lastly, do you have a favourite quote or motivation that you base your approach on to,
Yeah, I'm a bit of a fan of Eleanor Roosevelt, to be honest. Everything she seems to say, or everything people record of her saying, seems to hit a target with me. But one of my favourite ones when it comes to leadership and supporting business is that a good leader inspires people to have confidence in the leader. A great leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves. Eleanor Roosevelt.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Melissa.
No
Is there anything else you'd like to add on to the end of that today?
Not all that much. Look, I can always add something if you need me to, but I think our main one is that I really love how, as organisations, as people, we can support the people around us. And if we treat people with the respect that they deserve, or the respect that they need, you'll end up having a fantastic team. You've just got to find what drives them.
Awesome. Well, those are some really great points there, and I think a lot of us will definitely make some notes of that and use it in our everyday lives. So we really thank you for joining us today, Melissa.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So now we'll cross over to Luke. If you haven't seen him already, you may have seen him in our previous sessions. He has hosted a number of them, and he's also presented in our week 6 session. So before we come on over to Luke, I just want to remind everyone to be sure to put all of your questions and comments in that little chat box under the all panelists option, so everyone can see exactly what it is that you have to say. Without further ado, over to you, Luke.
Well, thank you, Nicole. You are wonderful. That was a great interview. One of the best ones yet, some might say. Two powerhouses.
Thanks to Melissa. She did awesome.
You both did awesome. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you, Nick. You are wonderful. Bear with me while I get this presentation working. It was flipping the screens around on me before. So, Nick, can you let me know, is that presentation or what are we looking at there?
We are currently looking at your note screen. So if you want to just switch that over.
What about now?
Yep, that's amazing.
Happy days. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another installment. Week 11 we're up to today. So, look, the last couple of weeks have run a little bit long. Lindsay last week kept it short for Lindsay anyway. For Spiros the week before, we kept it long. Both awesome presentations. Our topic today is how to lead and manage effective workplace relationships. Given the fact that we've run a couple of long ones, I'm going to keep today's really short. It doesn't take many words, right? So my best advice and the strongest suggestion I can give you on this topic is that it's not a good idea. Do not have a workplace relationship. That's it. Thank you so much. See you next week. Of course, I'm joking, but we are on to week 11, and the topic this week is developing and managing workplace relationships. So far, we've had a look at a huge range of topics from sales to marketing, legal, customer service, emotional quotient, business planning, and I hope you've been able to get a lot out of them. The inception of these webinars was brought on by a pandemic, and even in the last 3 months, the landscape's changed. Our routines are different, our habits are different, and how we fulfill different components of our daily lives have changed dramatically. So it's only normal to expect that our relationships have changed and look vastly different now. It's timely then that today's webinar zeroes in on leading, developing, and managing workplace relationships. As mentioned, today's webinar is based on a unit of competency from our Diploma of Leadership and Management offered by the Pool and Spa's industry's only dedicated RTO, SPASA training. At the moment, we have a 50% off offer on these courses in our business units till the end of the financial year. So don't miss your opportunity to get qualified at the discounted rate. You'll also see PayRight, who sponsored our webinar last week, and you heard from them. They're one of our partners, but we're also one of our suppliers. You can utilize those flexible learning options and flexible payment options to get qualified now. Because this unit's so large, we're going to focus on 3 things today. If we were to summarize today's webinar into one word, it would be relationships. It's how we are as individuals and how we manage these effective workplace relationships. For those of us in leadership roles, how we're going to facilitate the development of workplace relationships of our teams. Workplace culture is driven largely from the interactions between individuals, and it's important that we spend some time looking at this part of our business, as culture has the ability to beat strategy, so much so that culture should be strategic. To that end, let's look at our 3 sections. Number 1, recognition. We need to recognize the difference between relationships across locations, across teams, across personality types. And once we've recognized that there are different relationships at play, we're able to act accordingly and formulate strategies on how to manage the relationship. The second R is range or diversity. We'll explore the value that a diverse team brings to an organization and some of the challenges that we'll face in being effective across the whole range of the team. And thirdly, reliance. We've all been there. I know I'm young, but I've experienced my fair share of high-performing teams and also teams that are completely dysfunctional. And the key element of this is the reliance or the trust that we've had in our colleagues or our management or the organization itself. By the end of today, my intention is that you'll feel more equipped to lead and manage effective workplace relationships. It's paramount that we nurture these relationships to encourage a positive workplace culture. Please do interact in the chat box by electing to send messages to all panelists and attendees and participate in any polls or workshop questions so we can learn together. Then, at the end of today's session, please do take a minute or so to leave some feedback for us. Before we dive in, let's consider some statistics. So if we consider life to be an average age of 80 years, we'll spend 14.25 years working. That's a long time to spend with people, especially people we don't like. Highly engaged teams with functional relationships show a 21% greater profitability. It's strange how we've never been more connected to each other, and yet 85% of employees are either not engaged or actively disengaged in their work. Now, this can cost the Australian and the New Zealand economy around $70 billion Australian per year. It's been researched that managers who focus on their employees' strengths or positive characteristics only have 4% of employees who are actively disengaged, compared to the managers who focus on employees' weaknesses, resulting in a 24% level of disengagement, active disengagement. Empirical evidence shows that people who are part of a high trust organization experience more energy, 76% more engagement with their jobs, 74% less stress, fewer days off for illness, and 29% greater life satisfaction. Now, these are some mind-blowing statistics that we need to work through and shows the importance of having positive workplace relationships. So let's get into recognition. Now, whether you've been in the workplace for a few weeks or a few decades, it's safe to say that good workplace relationships can make a job more enjoyable and promote productivity. But on the flip side, even just one negative workplace relationship can make you dread your job, make it tough to get up in the morning. To properly approach relationships, though, we need to first acknowledge that our workplace relationships are different from other relationships. Our spousal relationships or friendship groups typically function due to the personal element, whereas our working relationships should be, at least, grounded in achieving common goals. Once we've acknowledged and understood that our workplace relationships are different and become effective through aligned goals, we're able to approach them accordingly. So let's have a look at some of these differences. Discovery. Naturally, there are inherent differences between each of us as individuals. Therefore, there will be an impact on our relationships. Think about some experiences that you've had. Think of the differences in the relationships between you and your boss, or you and your co-workers. What about other stakeholders of the business, suppliers or customers, for example? Competition. Relationships are likely different too between some of your co-workers, some of which you'll live a harmonious life with, a functional life, and others that you might compete with. You consider them to be a rival, or you might have some conflict with them. We'll talk about this more in our range area, but these differences have the ability to affect the workplace culture in a positive way or a negative way. Culture, as we know, is critical to the effectiveness of an organization. All right, let's have a quick workshop question. I'm going to throw a poll up real quick. Feel free to put it in the chat box or have a look at this poll. I want to understand, Melissa talked about it earlier, about personality quizzes or behavioral types. Can I get an indication in the poll or the chat box, who has completed a personality test? Like the Myers-Briggs or the DISC or Enneagrams, any of those. Nicole's going to go through and put a link in the comments box to a website called 16 Personalities. And if you haven't done any tests, or do you just like to do them, and this is a new one for you, spend some time here and it will give you a comprehensive description. For me, I'm an entertainer, well, according to the quiz. I hope you're entertained. And I often find myself nodding my head to some of the insights that I'm learning through here. All right, just a couple more seconds and I'll just throw those polls over to you. Lots of people have done the tests by the looks of things. DISC is a common one, Myers-Briggs, Wilson Learning, a lot of them. All right, I'll go and close that now. Melbourne, yeah. All right, have a look at some of these results. Naturally, Myers-Briggs and DISC become some more of the common ones. It's interesting that I find the 62% versus 38% on whether these were helpful or not. For me, this is kind of where it all begins. Stephen Covey, probably one of the world's most renowned authors, in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, lists habit 5 as seek first to understand, then to be understood. To help us to build this though, we need to understand ourselves and how we're perceived by our colleague or our boss so that our relationship can be understood and managed effectively. It's an interesting experiment to conduct these personality tests, if you will, on some of our key relationships. I like to do them on my wife, for example, sometimes so I can understand her perspective, but mainly so I can work out why I keep getting in trouble. Interesting comment there just come through the chat from Lee Salisbury. It's a really good point, so I'll just touch on it quickly. Thank you, Simon. I am a brave man. Lee says that doing the test is easy, but it's using the information you get from the test that is the issue. And that's true. That can be difficult. Interpreting ourselves or being willing enough or comfortable enough to use it and acknowledge it and then approach relationships is definitely key. The second component that we're going to look at today is discourse. So we understand now that there are different relationships in workplaces and that it's not always going to be happy days. I know for me, over my career, I've had colleagues where my relationship has become untenable, and this greatly affects all parts of my life. What I've also come to understand, though, is that in every workplace, disagreements and likely untenable relationships are going to occur, and these need to be managed. A quote from an article in Forbes by Nicole Lipkin says, "The people who are most adaptable in life, who can figure out how to work with difficult people, are the ones that people want to be around." And often, these situations can show us more about ourselves than of our co-workers. And a great way we can do this is to monitor the discourse of our relationships. We might, for example, treat our boss with a little bit more respect or honor. Where our co-workers, we might be a little bit more friendly or a little bit more matey. Or to our direct reports, we're going to be often a little bit more authoritative. To our customers, we are, hopefully at least, a little bit more lenient or have our customer service personality on. Compared to when we're meeting with suppliers, where we become a little bit more direct or assertive, like we're negotiating the cessation of a war. A bit like Melissa mentioned earlier, all people need to be treated the way that they need to be treated. And our discourse should be tailored to the appropriate person at the appropriate time through the appropriate channel. Now, I love that over the last few months, things have changed dramatically. We've had limited opportunity to meet face-to-face or to sell and engage with people that way. We've had to rely on and adapt to new means of communications like Zoom. How you going? We're here now. Fun fact for you quickly. The Zoom stock price was $62.74 US in December 2019 and currently sits, well, there you go, sit on the screen at $251.27. Goes to show how much our communication types have changed or needed to change just in the course of a few months. Another poll for you, if you will. What is your preferred communication type? Bear with me while I put it on the screen. There we go. Let me know. How do you prefer to communicate? I mean, I feel like I live on the screen now behind my computer. But we still have other methods of communicating with our colleagues, our suppliers, and our customers. It might be face-to-face occasionally, or via text or social media chat. I know I talk to a lot of you via Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn Messenger. It might be phone or email, video call, or even, heaven forbid, via post. It's interesting there, the comments that are coming through. Chris Kimberly there, face-to-face. Body language tells me a lot. That's so true. I'm going to go ahead and wrap that poll up now. Everyone's agreeing with Chris by the looks of things, and the poll shows that. 67% of us like to meet face-to-face. It'd be an interesting thought process to work through what this looked like a mere 4 months ago, back in February or January, when, well, we could meet face-to-face. I wonder if there was any fatigue there. I know certainly now it may have swung the other way, but we don't know. Let's have some fun for a moment and let me know some pet peeves that you guys have on some communication types. Let me know in the chat box. Janie, good one. Text and email can be misinterpreted. There you go. Have a read of some of these. I like to go through some of these every now and then. I find them very interesting. You guys are right, Jane and Lee. It can be so difficult to convey a message in the written form and to interpret the tenet of the message. I mean, who can relate to some of these you guys see on the screen? For me, it's 100% necessary to greet someone, even on email or shorthand using text. I'm one of these people. The amount of times I've skipped saying hi there, so-and-so, only to complete the email, come back and write a greeting before clicking send. Or to simply say kind regards at the end of an email. I mean, come on, how hard is it? To me, and some others, emails without greetings or closing the email properly can be taken or misconstrued as rude. For others though, not mentioning any names, this is just their way of passing a message on for someone to handle, this. No harm meant by it, certainly no anger or frustration behind it, perhaps just busy in the moment that they click go. In some relationships, it might be inappropriate to call on a personal mobile phone or conduct business via LinkedIn or Facebook Messenger. Other organizations may have rules regarding out-of-hours emails rather. In fact, research shows that it may be more conducive to a functional work-life balance to time the email for the next day or simply just hold off on sending. I'm gonna have a look now at some of these comments, so bear with me. I'm just gonna scroll back through. Janie, yes, kind regards, although you're not one to hold back usually. Yep, Derek, good feedback. Shouting capital letters is a pet peeve. That's a good call. Emails in subject lines is another one. Passive aggressiveness is an art form, according to Naomi. Very true. Very true. Feedback from Simon, that's a good one. No feedback is very bad. Abbreviations from Jim. CC them and give them a task. Beautiful. There's a lot of different feelings in this. Let's move now to Decipher, which is the third D in the recognition section. It's no secret that a big place of annoyance in a workplace is unnecessary meetings. Forbes research data shows that 27% of all meeting time is wasted. I mean, we've all been in them, right? Meetings which drag on with chit chat or no outcome is achieved, or it feels like the same meeting as last time about the same topic. To reduce friction on these relationships in the workplace though, we need to decipher which platform is appropriate for the outcome that we want to achieve. And certainly not every meeting can be an email, but conversely, not everything needs to have a meeting. 4 tips from Forbes bundled into a nice acronym for us can help us find the right direction for choosing the platform for communication. Epic collaboration provides the framework. The E for emotion helps us to understand that when a topic becomes loaded, where we misread tones or overreact or become oppositional rather than collaborative, means it's time to pick up the phone or mean face-to-face. P for purpose prompts us to ask the question of what will be different as a result of this meeting. If we're just looking to inform someone of something, another mode like an email or Slack or the workplace messaging system would be more effective. I for interpersonal. Sometimes it's okay to have a meeting for the sake of fueling effective collaboration or to strengthen the relationship and better the workplace experience. Perhaps that person though might prefer a funny email. So it depends on this individual relationship. And then C is for complexity. If the topic of an email is detail heavy or contains critical, essential data, an email might not be the best platform as they can often be read quickly, scanned over, or just completely missed. A good rule of thumb is if you're including 4 or more people in the email, a meeting would likely be more efficient. Now we move on to our second R in relationship, the range. I was talking with one of the leaders in our industry when I was preparing for today's topic and realized just how clever they've been in having a range of team members across a vast plethora of circumstances. They replied by saying it took a lot of hard work. I mean, from the outside, it might seem so simple, and yet finding the balance is exactly as they said. It takes hard, strategic work to ensure there is range within a workplace. Now, often range or diversity can be bundled up with and oversimplified by only considering a person's race or their gender. It's far broader than this though, right? We need to consider having a diverse age group or range of motivating factors or primary and secondary skill sets. The diversity of those looking to develop themselves or just happy to churn away at the work. We need to have a balance of personalities and those who uplift and affect positive change on the culture. I mean, we could go down a proper rabbit hole on this one, on managing workplace diversity. In fact, there's a whole unit of competency dedicated to it. For today, though, let's look at the importance of and the impact of having range in the workplace. Firstly, the importance. I mean, it's critical. Naturally, it will be challenging initially because we need to challenge some of the norms. If we haven't got great range, we need to challenge the norms of an organization. It'll be challenging when the walls start to get broken down. But if we start with the end in mind, the business case will be positive when managed effectively. At the start of this section, we established that diversity is oversimplified. Now let's challenge diversity as the standalone answer. When we consider what a truly effective workplace looks like, our relationships in these workplaces become equitable, right? So how do we get there? Jim Link lays down a 3-step theory that starts with diversity. So that's step 1. This is attracting the range of talent, retaining and growing the team. Diversity is a quantifiable component. The next step, though, is inclusion. So we've got diversity, now we've got inclusion. Think of the workplaces where the leadership or the management has been vocal about encouraging contributions from all team members, where all employees are empowered to bring thoughts to the table. When done correctly, the 3rd step is achieved, which is equality. And from here, Jim highlights that equity is a state rather than a step. When the 3 steps are completed and the balance is upheld, equity becomes the natural state. The importance of this can't be understated, and when sustained, the effect that range has on a workplace can be extended far beyond the tangible, quantifiable benefits. Let's look at the impacts now. I mean, it's easy to get hung up on the negatives. It's too hard to start introducing. These norms are too embedded to challenge. We might say they just don't fit the culture of our team, and our team cohesion will fall apart. Or, I don't have the time to break down the language barrier or afford the miscommunications. Consider this though, many of the world's largest research bodies, think of McKinsey or Harvard Business Review or Fast Company or Glassdoor, have reported that increased diversity or range leads to increases in productivity, in innovation, and employee engagement, as well as improvement in employee tenure, company reputation, range of skills, and cultural insights. I mean, underpinning all this is a greater ROI or profitability. So we've looked now at the importance and the impact of having range in the workplace. So how does the rubber hit the road, and what relevance does it have to managing workplace relationships? To apply it in our teams, we start by understanding that range is the quality of being different and unique at an individual or group level. We value this range by recognizing and respecting the value of these differences, and then we manage it by creating and sustaining an environment where everyone can achieve their full potential. When we as leaders, managers, or colleagues foster these styles of environments, there's a certain synergy that starts to evolve, or rather an alignment of personal goals, our professional goals, and most importantly, because it is a workplace after all, we find alignment in our organizational goals. I mean, oftentimes in the moment it's hard to fathom or feel tangibly, but reflect with me for a moment, because I expect that there have been times in your work lives that things have just felt easy or cohesive, or like our team is just crushing it on all fronts. Our relationships with each other, with suppliers, with customers are just in this harmonious state. I mean, this has likely occurred because of the balance in diversity of the team. Let me know in the chat box below if you've felt the impact of having a wide-ranging team, or conversely, a time where you've noticed the limitations of not having range in your workplace. We now move on to the 3rd R, which is reliance or trust. I think it's safe to say that we rely heavily on our workplace relationships. We trust that our colleagues are on our side. We trust that the organization we're working for has, well, at least some of our best interests at heart. We rely on different teams within our organization to work cohesively, from sales to marketing to operations to account, all led effectively by management teams. We rely on our partners, on our suppliers to serve us to the best of their ability so that we can do the same for our customers. Of all the threats that businesses face today, according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, more than 55% of CEOs believe that a lack of trust is a foundational threat to their company. Perhaps you say, Luke, duh, like all great relationships are based on trust. Our personal relationships certainly flourish when centered on trust. When something happens to break that trust, poof, trust is obliterated and it's a very difficult road back. If we can't rely on our workplace relationships, what can we rely on? A paycheck? That's it. I'm going to run a third poll now, and I don't know what to expect from this one, but I'd love to understand, how do you feel about trust? How do you trust? Do you trust first and wait to be heard? Or do you trust later in the piece? Yes, Jane, trust is a two-way street. Our employers need to be able to trust us, and we need to be able to trust them. Interesting results coming through. Give it another 10 or so seconds. Good comment there, Lindsay. Range provides different insights. 20, 40, 30, 60 ages all see the same challenges, but from a different set of skills and life experiences. Regions, social styles, and all adds to a firm's culture. Chris, to prove yourself to the client brings trust, but that can be a hurdle at times. Yep, spot on. All right, I'm going to end that poll there. I find the results interesting, at least. And I don't know whether some of us view ourselves through rose-colored glasses. I know I probably do. You know, 78% of people in this webinar say that they trust everyone until they're shown not to be. I mean, that's what I'd select, but I don't know if that's true in reality. I like to think it's true, but I'm not sure. There's some interesting results. So how do we establish trust? Around a century ago, Teddy Roosevelt, Theodore Roosevelt, yeah, the Roosevelts are getting a run today. Eleanor up early with Melissa, and now Teddy. So he's a former American president, coined the phrase, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Yes, Lindsay, this mustache has its own culture and its own postcode. Thank you. Let me repeat that. So no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I've always thought of this as a great starting point for establishing trust. Over my career, I've moved cities, I've changed careers and jobs, and it's tough, right? Each time, even within the same organization, we need to rebuild that rapport and establish that trust with new people. I mean, the few times that I've felt settled in teams, and I mean really settled, it's when I've known that I've established and gained the trust of management and also my colleagues. And sometimes this can happen quickly, but most of the time, it takes longer than 6 months. Tangibly though, the tipping point between no trust and implicit trust is when others know how much we care. So we're going to look at 4 key elements of establishing trust. Number one, you know, we read a lot about this lately in the business world, is being authentic. We need to find our voice that is uniquely us. If we can be true to ourselves, then we'll go a long way to establishing trust. EQ, or emotional quotient, intelligence, whatever you want to call it. We did a full webinar on this from week 5, so check it out for more information. But essentially, this means tuning into our own emotions and those of others. You know, another word might be empathetic. Third one, climate building, not climate change, but building a climate of trust. So even when you're not in a leadership position, you can still create an environment where people can approach you with ideas or values or concerns. And fourthly, and possibly most importantly, walking the talk. So it becomes pretty obvious and pretty transparent. So we need to let our actions speak louder than our words and let everyone see our values in action. Pretty key. We're then going to have a quick look at endorsing. So as leaders, specifically now, it's up to us to endorse a reliant workplace. From the top down, it's up to us to encourage the growth of in our teams, the growth of trust in our teams, in our workplaces. And if we build on Teddy Roosevelt's principle of ensuring that our teams know how much we care, we can move then to being efficient with time and effective with people. So great leaders who foster environments built on trust can be relied upon to make themselves available to their team, often despite their even busier schedules. So as leaders, we need to embody the 4 elements above that we talked about just before to promote the trust building elements across our organization. And we're the champions for fostering the environment for people to learn by failing, to grow through self-awareness, to acknowledge that we are humans as well and mistakes will happen. We need to be confident enough that we can be authentic and humble enough that we can be transparent. And I think the ultimate goal in effective workplace relationships, when it comes to the reliance element at least, is to have a high trust organization. We looked at some of the statistics at the front of this webinar, but high trust cultures have a bunch of positives and a bunch of upsides. You know, high trust cultures foster creativity, autonomy, and motivation. There's limited antagonism and hierarchy or competition between different business areas and levels, and employees focus on collaborating to create the greatest impact for the organization. There's a blame-free culture, and feedback is provided and solicited regularly. And in all directions throughout the organization, employees are highly engaged and feel supported to take calculated risks and learn from fast failures. There's a focus on and consistent investment in helping teams and leaders achieve their full potential. Often flexible working hours are frequently adopted, I mean more so lately with this whole working from home thing. And technology is in place to support these options. Relationships between employees are largely positive, and there's genuine appetite for helping and watching others succeed. Employees stay in their jobs. I mean, that's key. How much does it cost to train someone new? If you're continually turning over staff, there's a massive cost on the business. And the continued expansion of this trust leads to consistent competitive advantage for our organization. So this brings us to the end of our session today on leading and managing workplace relationships. There you go, Melissa's just popped up there. $25,000 per person to upskill to the level needed. I mean, that's a huge cost. So I trust that you've learned something today as we've explored through the need to recognize the need to purposely develop workplace relationships. We've explored the need of having range within our organizations. And we've explored how we rely on having high trust workplaces to continually improve relationships with all stakeholders in our business. As we end, are there any questions that you guys would like to ask on this particular topic? I can stick around for a bit while they come through. Not too many. Yep. Sarah, link to the personality test. Nicole will pop it up again. If you can, please, Nicole.
Yep, I'll put that in there in a few seconds for everyone.
You are awesome. Thank you. So as we come to the end, thank you for your participation again. How do you broach the conversation with staff? From Lindsay, hey? Do you want to answer that question yourself? So how do we broach it? We need to sit down and have a planned conversation. We need to set the clear expectations with our staff, and we need to develop that relationship as we go. Jim, I'll come back to you on what is needed but not how to achieve it. I think we have touched on some of those points, but I'll reach out to you separately and unpack some of those for you. Chris, any advice on ways to work with clients having a bad experience with staff? Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, we should always defend as much as we can our staff, but we do need to acknowledge that mistakes happen. And I think most of the time clients are understanding of that. As long as we approach it with that level of humility along the way, and we acknowledge that we can do what we can to fix it. We approach with it with perhaps a gift or an offer to improve. So again, I'd like to thank you guys for your participation today. We are back next week for how and where to find your potential customers. The 30th of June, the last day, so don't miss the opportunity to get that 50% off offer on our business courses. And I can stick around, Simon, I can see something there, so I'll have a chat with you. And until next week, guys, we'll end it there and we'll see you again. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.